So my hair is doing something really weird right here, and we are just going to ignore the little baby hairs that will not stay put. Hey guys, so today I'm going to be reviewing the Bare Minerals BareSkin Pure Brightening Serum Foundation. I did a first impressions on this a while back, and I asked you guys if you would like to see just a full-on review, and a lot of people said yes, and so I figured that I have now given this about 2 weeks, like I guess technically like 13 days, but pretty much 2 weeks. I've used so many different methods of applying this, and I've been wearing it every single day that I've been wearing foundation, which lately has been quite a bit because I've been working so much. So I feel like I have a really good feel for this stuff. Let's start with the basics. I believe that this retails for $29, which I don't think is bad at all. To consider where you're getting. This foundation only contains 16 ingredients. There is no traditional waters, no mineral oils. However, there are like jojoba oils and coconut water in this. Think about it, I mean, you're paying $29 for some very basic ingredients. So I guess when you lump it together in the sum of high-end foundations, yes, it's not very expensive, but when you think about what exactly you're paying for in this, it is a little bit pricey. So I would just keep that in mind if you're thinking about purchasing this. The shade selection of this is really good. It ranges from really light to really deep. I've heard some people say that the range is a little bit too yellow, but personally, I love that because I have very strong yellow undertones in my skin, and so I really like foundations that tend to run a bit more yellow, and I do think that there are some very good pink options in this. So the idea of this foundation is to be for all skin types. It's supposed to have buildable coverage, and basically it's just supposed to be like your next holy grail liquid foundation. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty and jump to the demonstration, and then I'll pop back and tell you guys my overall thoughts on this. So we're just going to start by shaking this stuff up super well. The better, or I should say the more you shake it, not necessarily the better you shake it, the more you shake this, the better result you're going to get. Sometimes I notice this happens too. After I've shaken it, there seems to be a lot of product just like dripping off the nozzle. So I will just usually take like a paper towel and just clean that up. So the best way to apply this, like I've said, that I found is with the Real Technique sponge or beauty blender, whatever you prefer. And then I just like to place about 2 drops onto it. So just like that. And then I will take these drops and let's get my mirror over. And then I'll just begin to place these drops on my face, or just kind of stipple the product on a little bit. I mentioned this in my first impressions. There's something about this foundation that kind of smells a little bit weird. I still can't get over it. Each time I go to apply, it's just kind of an odd scent. But anyway, and then just taking the sponge, I just kind of like to blend it in like you would with any other type of foundation. Now, I find that this foundation works best if you build it up in layers. You're going to notice a really cakey effect, and also a really almost like dry looking effect if you apply too much at once. So really the key here is to just go little bits at a time. Don't apply like 4 or 5 drops of this at once. Start with like 1 or 2 and then build your way up as you need it. A great thing about this foundation is that it's awesome if you're in a hurry, because seriously, this has taken like 30 seconds and it's completely blended in. The blending time on this is just amazing. Like, it really does not require a lot of buffing. It doesn't require you to really get in. It really just requires minimal effort on your part, which I like. So after I have 1 layer on, this is where sometimes depending on the day, today for some reason I have a lot of kind of like splotchiness in my skin, so I am going to go in with another drop. Sometimes I find that 2 drops is completely enough and I don't need any more, but I'm just going to go in with a third. Now with this 3rd drop, I'm just going to be placing it really like here in the center of my face and then buffing it out. So with 3 drops, this is the coverage level that we're at, and this is kind of where I like to stop. So what I'll do if I need any extra coverage, like on any blemishes, is just go in with my regular concealer. I'm using the Kat Von D one. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom you guys up on some of the dry spots so you guys can kind of see what I talk about when I say that this tends to cling to dry areas. So it's just clinging a little bit over there. You can see here on the sides of my nose. There we go. It kind of clings to any dryness I have over there. This side's going to be a little bit hard to see because we don't have the light source coming in from here, but really on this side you can really see just any of the little dry flaky bits it tends to pick up on. I have a few little dry bits over here. I did exfoliate my skin really well prior to applying this, and I think that that's kind of a key when you are working with this foundation, is you have to make sure that you have nicely exfoliated skin, because it will pick up on dry areas. So the next thing I like to do is go in and powder my skin, and the powder that I find that works best for this is the Too Faced Primed and Poreless. I also use a super minimal amount. This foundation just doesn't really love powder because, again, it just picks up on dry spots a lot, so I really like to use a very minimal amount, just enough to set my face Alright, so that is it for the demonstration. Now let's cut back to the review. So overall, I do like this foundation. Do I love this foundation and consider it a holy grail and say everybody must go out and buy it? No. However, the more that I wear this foundation, the more that I like it. And there was one day, actually yesterday, where I took a break from this back to just using my Revlon Nearly Naked foundation with a little bit of my Cargo One Base. That kind of mixture that I've been talking about recently that used to work really, really well for me. I used that yesterday and I noticed that my face just didn't have the same look that it usually does. And like I said, I've been on such a kick with this and I've been using this so much. When I used that routine yesterday, even though I still really do like that routine, there was something about it that was just a little bit off. I've just kind of adapted to how this looks on my skin. I've started to really like the way that this looks on my skin, but I notice now when I use other foundations, I tend to notice a little bit more flaws. Because I find, like I said, the more that I use this, the more I seem to really like it. Let's get down to a little bit about the application and different methods of which I have applied this. The two primers that I've used this with are the Rimmel Fix and Perfect, which has like weird lip tar stuff all over it for some reason. And then the Makeup Forever HD. Between these two, I prefer the Makeup Forever HD. It's like my go-to primer. I tend to prefer it almost every foundation. And I think that there's something about the silicones in this that just don't mix very well with the serum foundation. This is not a super silicone-y texture. This isn't like the Smashbox Photo Finish. I think that if you have a foundation primer that you typically use that is that very silicone-y, that very silky, slippery kind of feel, think Smashbox Photo Finish or Rimmel Fix and Perfect Pro, that kind of thing. I don't think that you're going to enjoy using that primer with this foundation as much. I just find that the foundation doesn't buff as well over it, and there's just something about the ingredients in this and then the silicones and some primers that just don't mix super well, and you end up getting kind of like patchy coverage. It wears off a lot faster, so I did not like it so much with this, but with the Makeup Forever HD, I really, really liked it. I found that it helped to improve the wear time, which if there's one thing that this foundation is missing, it's a good solid wear time. Without a primer, by itself, maybe with a little bit of powder, you're looking at 4 to 5 hours. And something that this foundation does too that I find quite annoying is that it does transfer. So if you have your phone and you're talking on it or whatever, you will notice some transferring of the foundation on your phone. Which isn't very cute, but I mean, this isn't a long wear foundation. I don't think that necessarily claims to be. So I find what I really have to do with foundation is just kind of sandwich it between a primer and a good powder. So for primer, like I said, this is the best option that I've found. If you have a primer in your collection that's just not super silicone-y, that will work great with this. As for brushes for applying this, I have used and kind of rotated between 3 different ones. I have used the Real Technique stippling brush, my Sonia Kashuk buffing brush, which is kind of just your typical really, really stiff, round top kind of kabuki brush that tends to work well with most foundations. This tends to be my favorite with most foundations. And then the Real Technique's Complexion sponge. Out of these 3, this wins all the way. There's just something about this that it doesn't accentuate the dry spots like this foundation typically does, especially with brushes. Brushes just cause a lot of micro exfoliation on the skin, and so when you use it with foundation like this that is going to accentuate dry spots, you're going to notice those dry spots even more. So I find the sponge to be the best method. I also used the Sigma Round Kabuki F82. I really just hate this brush, so I found this to be the worst method to apply it with. I think it's just a little bit too stiff, and again, if you have any dryness on your skin, it's just going to pick it up right away. As for powders, again, I've tried 3. I have tried the Carez Wild Rose Brightening Powder, which tends to be my go-to powder. I have tried the Rimmel Stay Matte on top of this, and I have tried the Too Faced Primed and Poreless. Out of these 3, the Too Faced Primed and Poreless definitely wins. And that's kind of funny because the silicones in the foundation primer didn't seem to agree with this foundation. However, that kind of silicone-y texture or that silica powder really seemed to work well on top of it, which I don't know what that's all about. But I figured that this wouldn't work really nicely, but it did. It actually worked very nicely. I found that it set the foundation nicely. Of course, it didn't add like any extra coverage or anything, but it really just kind of blurred everything and made everything look really poreless and really seamless. I really, really do enjoy this powder for that. And just over this foundation, it seemed to work really well. As for who I'd recommend this foundation to, if you have normal to combination skin where you don't have a lot of texture issues, then you will really like this. If you notice you have a lot of dryness, if you notice you have maybe a lot of breakouts, I don't think that this is going to work super well for you, especially too if you have a lot of lines, if you're a little bit more mature. I think you're going to notice that this may settle into those a bit. I think that you want to have a pretty good texture to your skin, and really if you want this foundation to work for you, what you need is, like I said, normal to combination skin that doesn't have too many issues, because this isn't like a full-on really, really heavy-duty coverage foundation. It's just kind of a medium coverage that you can build up or you can sheer out. And I think think that you need to not have problems with super oily skin, just because this doesn't wear very long and it will break down during the day. But again, you can't have very dry skin because it accentuates dry spots like crazy. So you have to be like that happy medium, which I think is kind of annoying because they do claim this to be for all skin types. However, for my skin, I find I get oily in the T-zone and I'm pretty like normal everywhere else. I'm not super dry, but I tend to get dry wherever I have spots, and also get dry around my nose for some reason, which is weird because it's like oily yet dry, and I do exfoliate that area and I still moisturize it very well. So I don't know what is up with that, but it's always been like that. So I find for my skin, this works pretty well. Days where this foundation works better than others. I noticed that if I really take the time to exfoliate and moisturize well, then this looks amazing. So as you guys can tell, I'm kind of in the middle of this. After using some of my other foundations, I'm like, wow, this really does look good. By the way, I have this in the shade number 05 Bare Cream. I don't know if I mentioned that in the demo or not, but it matches my skin amazingly because it has that really nice warm yellow undertone to it, which I love again. There's just something about this that when I do have it on my skin, it looks good. The only thing I don't like is how it accentuates dry spots and how it has such a short wear time. If those two things could be fixed, I would love this foundation, because I mean, I can powder on top of the oilier areas and I can use a good primer, you know, to help with the wear time, but overall I think that those are just two big things that this foundation suffers from. I will continue to use it. I will continue to really like it because, like I said, the more I use this, the more I seem to enjoy it. I think I've gotten it down to a routine too, with that primer, that sponge, and that powder to really give me a nice, really nice look. And yeah, so I do like it. Another thing you guys may be wondering is if this causes any sensitivity on my skin. It doesn't at all. And actually I find that this foundation does not break me out one bit, which I think is awesome because I have real problems with foundations breaking me out. So I love that about this. So yeah, I think that I covered everything. If you guys have any other questions, please just leave all that in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have an awesome day and I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.